Imagine this. You're standing on a beach in modern Florida, watching the sunset splash brilliant oranges and purples across the sky. Then suddenly you realize that under your feet lies one of the most mysterious landscapes on Earth. This is no ordinary stretch of land. It's a peninsula that has quietly held secrets for thousands, maybe millions of years. Secrets that mainstream science struggles to make sense of. Mysteries that shake up everything we thought we knew about ancient civilizations, prehistoric life, and the very foundations of human history. Florida, that sun-soaked getaway known for theme parks and retirement communities, is actually a goldmine of archaeological oddities that would leave even the most experienced researchers scratching their heads in confusion. From sunken cities older than any known civilization to bizarre rock formations that seem to ignore the laws of physics, the Sunshine State offers more questions than answers. Tonight, we're going to take a trip through time, plunging into the most puzzling mysteries Florida has to offer. We'll look at ancient structures that shouldn't exist, weigh evidence of civilizations that mainstream archaeology refuses to accept, and dig into events that make you question whether everything we've been taught about our past is just a carefully built story. So, get comfortable, because what you're about to hear will shake up your understanding of history, science, and maybe even reality itself. Chapter 1. The Underwater Pyramids of Bimini. Just off Florida's coast, in the crystal-clear waters near Bimini in the Bahamas, sits one of the most hotly debated archaeological finds of modern times. The Bimini Road, as it's often called, is made up of huge limestone blocks laid out in what looks like a planned pattern, stretching nearly half a mile along the seafloor. When pilot Robert Brush first spotted these formations from the air in 1968, he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Here, under 25 feet of water, was what seemed to be an old road, or maybe the base of a giant building. The blocks, some weighing many tons, are fitted together so carefully that it seems hard to believe they formed naturally. Dr. Manson Valentine, a zoologist and amateur archaeologist, was one of the first to dive down and get a close look at these structures. What he saw didn't add up. The blocks weren't just random pieces of limestone. They were fitted together neatly, some with tool marks and others with what looked like mortar between the joints. But here's where it gets really strange. According to standard geology, this area was above sea level around 12,000 years ago, during the last ice age. If these structures really were built by humans, and if they were made when the land was dry, then we're looking at construction that happened thousands of years before the earliest known civilizations. The implications are enormous. Who could have put together such massive structures? What advanced society lived in this area at a time when mainstream archaeology says humans were still living in small hunter-gatherer groups? And why does the academic world seem so unwilling to seriously study these findings? Some researchers think the Bimini Road might be tied to the lost city of Atlantis, the legendary civilization described by the ancient Greek philosopher Plato. Plato placed Atlantis in the Atlantic Ocean, beyond the Pillars of Hercules, which would put it somewhere around the Caribbean or near Florida. Edgar Cayce, the well-known American psychic called the Sleeping Prophet, said in the 1930s that parts of Atlantis would rise again near Bimini in 1968 or 1969, and remarkably, the Bimini Road was found in 1968, exactly when Cayce predicted. Coincidence, or proof of something much deeper? The debate around the Bimini Road heated up when geologists started saying the formations were just natural limestone, shaped by geological forces over millions of years. But that explanation doesn't account for several puzzling details at the site. For example, many blocks clearly show signs of being cut and shaped with tools. Some have perfectly straight edges and right angles that would be nearly impossible to create through natural erosion. Others show what look like anchor holes, round indentations that could have held ropes or chains. What's more, core samples taken from underneath the blocks have shown that the limestone sits on a base of sand and coral, which suggests the blocks were placed there on purpose, not formed where they lie. Dr. David Zink, a former English professor who spent years studying the site, made some surprising finds during his trips there in the 1970s. His team uncovered what looked like a stylized head carved from stone, geometric rock formations that seemed too regular to be natural, and several artifacts that didn't fit the standard timeline of human life in the area. One of the most fascinating discoveries was a piece of worked stone that seemed to contain traces of metal, possibly iron. That was especially confusing because the usual archaeological record says metalworking didn't reach the Americas until much later. The mystery gets even bigger when you think about the full scale of the Bimini Road. The main formation runs about 1,600 feet, but aerial surveys have picked up more structures in the surrounding area. Some researchers believe that what's been uncovered so far is only a small piece of a much larger complex that stretches for miles across the ocean floor. Satellite images have shown what appear to be more geometric shapes under the water around Bimini, including what some see as rectangular foundations and circular patterns. There could be the remains of old temples or ceremonial buildings. Chapter 2. The Coral Castle Mystery. Moving from the underwater puzzles to something just as baffling on dry land, we come to one of Florida's most mysterious structures, Coral Castle, located in Homestead. This isn't just another tourist stop. It's a monument to impossible engineering that still leaves scientists and engineers scratching their heads today. The story starts with Edward Leedskulnin, a Latvian immigrant who stood barely 5 feet tall and weighed only 100 pounds. Between 1923 and 1951, working completely alone and mostly at night, this tiny man somehow managed to dig up, carve, move, and put together over 1,100 tons of coral rock into an elaborate complex of structures that defies any simple explanation. Now, when I say this defies explanation, I'm not exaggerating. We're talking about massive blocks weighing up to 30 tons each, moved and placed so precisely that you can't slide a piece of paper between the joints. Some of these stones are balanced so well that despite their huge weight, they can be moved with just a light touch. The 9-ton gate, for instance, was so perfectly balanced on its pivot that visitors could open it with a gentle push, even though it stood 8 feet tall and 16 inches thick. When the gate finally stopped working in 1986, a team of engineers with a 50-ton crane and laser measuring tools had to figure out why. They found that the pivot point had shifted by just a tiny fraction of an inch, proof of the incredible accuracy of Leedskulnin's work. But here's what makes this truly mysterious. Leedskulnin did all this using only simple tools he made himself. No heavy machinery, no construction crews, no modern equipment. Neighbors said they saw him working by lamplight, singing to the stones in his native Latvian, and somehow moving these giant blocks as if they weighed nothing at all. When people asked how he pulled off this impossible task, Leedskulnin would only say that he understood the secrets of the ancient builders, that he knew how the pyramids were built. He spoke vaguely about magnetism, electricity, and cosmic forces, claiming he had rediscovered the lost knowledge of the ancients. Some people who knew him said they saw him place his hands on the coral blocks and appeared to make them move on their own. Others said he had some kind of device that could cancel out gravity or manipulate magnetic fields. But no one ever saw exactly how he did it, because Leedskulnin was extremely private about his methods and always worked alone. The coral blocks themselves present another puzzle. Leedskulnin dug them from his own property. But how did he cut them so perfectly? Coral rock is famously hard to work with because it's both tough and brittle. Modern quarry operations use diamond-tipped saws and hydraulic equipment. Yet Leedskulnin got cleaner cuts and more exact angles using primitive tools. The way some structures at Coral Castle line up with the stars adds another layer of mystery. The complex includes what seems to be an accurate sundial, a stone crescent that perfectly frames the North Star, and other astronomical features that show a deep understanding of how the heavens move. Leedskulnin said he was building the castle for his sweet 16, a young woman from Latvia who had called off their engagement. But researchers have noticed that the astronomical alignments might mean something more, possibly linked to ancient star knowledge or even communication with extraterrestrials. The magnetic qualities of the site have also drawn interest from researchers. Some have picked up strange magnetic readings throughout the complex, and stories persist about electronic devices acting up in certain parts of the castle. In the 1940s, a team of engineers from the University of Miami tried to study Leedskulnin's building methods. They were especially curious about his talk of magnetism and electricity. But Leedskulnin refused to work with them, insisting that his secrets would die with him. True to his word, Leedskulnin took his secrets to the grave. When he passed away in 1951, he left behind detailed drawings and notes, but they're written in a code that no one has been able to fully crack. The notes are packed with references to magnetic currents, cosmic forces, and math that seems to blend real physics with mystical ideas. Some modern researchers think Leedskulnin might have figured out a way to tap into the Earth's magnetic field or harness zero-point energy. Others believe he may have rediscovered acoustic levitation techniques supposedly used by ancient civilizations. The sound theory is especially interesting because several visitors to Coral Castle have reported hearing strange humming or resonant tones in certain areas of the complex, especially during particular weather or times of day. Chapter 3. The Crystal River Archaeological Complex. Deep in Florida's nature coast sits one of the most important and mysterious archaeological sites in North America, the Crystal River Archaeological Complex. This is not just another ancient settlement. It's an advanced ceremonial center that challenges what we think we know about prehistoric Native American skills and their links to faraway civilizations, dating back more than 2,000 years. The Crystal River site was home to a complex culture that archaeologists still struggle to fully understand. The site includes elaborate burial mounds, ceremonial platforms, and most intriguingly, a set of artifacts that seem completely out of place in prehistoric Florida. The largest mound at the site, called the Temple Mound, rises nearly 30 feet above the surrounding land and covers almost 2 acres at its base. This massive earthwork required moving thousands of tons of soil and shell without metal tools, wheels, or pack animals. But it's not just the size of the construction that makes Crystal River mysterious. It's how advanced the culture that built it was. Archaeological digs have uncovered evidence of long-distance trade networks that stretched thousands of miles, bringing rare materials from as far away as the Rocky Mountains and the Great Lakes region. Among the most puzzling finds are carved stone tablets covered in what looked like hieroglyphic writing. These tablets, found in burial spots, display symbols that closely resemble ancient writing systems from around the world, including Egyptian hieroglyphs, Phoenician script, and even what some researchers say are Celtic Ogham inscriptions. One tablet in particular has stirred up a lot of debate. Known as the Crystal River Tablet, it features a series of carved symbols that some researchers believe represent a form of ancient writing that predates known Native American picture writing systems. The symbols include spirals, crosses, and geometric patterns that also appear in other mysterious stone inscriptions found across the southeastern United States. Dr. Barry Fell, a Harvard professor and expert in ancient languages, studied photos of the Crystal River inscriptions in the 1970s and said they represented a type of ancient Celtic or Phoenician writing. According to his translations, the inscriptions talked about sun observations and religious ceremonies, suggesting that ancient Old World peoples may have reached Florida centuries before Columbus. While Fell's ideas remain controversial and are rejected by mainstream archaeology, the inscriptions themselves are undeniably real and continue to puzzle researchers. The precision of the carving, the complexity of the symbols, and their presence in such an ancient setting raise questions about the true skills and connections of prehistoric Florida cultures. The astronomical alignments at Crystal River add another layer to the mystery. Several of the site's main features line up to mark important solar and lunar events, including the winter and summer solstices. This suggests the builders had advanced knowledge of astronomy and could carry out long-term observations and calculations. Ground-penetrating radar surveys done in recent years have shown that the visible structures at Crystal River are only a small part of the whole complex. Beneath the surface lie more foundations, possible roadways, and what looked like carefully arranged post holes that might have held up large wooden buildings. The presence of exotic materials at the site points to extensive trade networks and cultural exchange that challenge standard ideas about prehistoric isolation. Mica from North Carolina, copper from Michigan, obsidian from the western United States, and shells from the Gulf of Mexico all made their way to this remote spot in ancient Florida. Perhaps most intriguingly, some of the copper artifacts found at Crystal River show signs of advanced metalworking, including techniques that weren't supposed to have existed in North America until Europeans arrived. Chemical analysis has shown that some copper objects were made using alloys and manufacturing methods that suggest a high level of skill in working metal. The burial practices at Crystal River also raise questions. Some graves contain people who were clearly of high status, buried with elaborate grave goods in specially prepared chambers, but others contain remains with unusual features, including some individuals who seem to have been much taller than typical Native Americans of that time. Studies of the bones from the site have found evidence of people who stood over 7 feet tall, far above the average height of prehistoric Native American groups. Some researchers think these might represent a separate genetic line, or possibly proof of contact with people from other continents. The site's connection to water also seems important. Crystal River sits at the meeting point of several waterways, and the ancient builders clearly chose this spot on purpose. Some researchers have suggested the site might have served as a kind of port or trading hub, helping commerce and cultural exchange across vast distances. Recent underwater archaeological surveys in the springs and waterways around Crystal River have uncovered more artifacts and structures that seem to extend the site's reach into the water. Stone formations beneath the surface suggest the ancient people may have held ceremonies or rituals that involved the springs themselves. Chapter 4. The Windover Archaeological Site. In 1982, developers getting ready to build a housing subdivision near Titusville made a discovery that would change our understanding of ancient Florida and challenge basic assumptions about prehistoric life in North America. The Windover archaeological site, as it became known, preserved an 8,000-year-old burial ground in such amazing condition that it rewrote the textbooks on ancient American cultures. What makes Windover so extraordinary isn't just its age, though 8,000 years is certainly impressive. It's the unmatched preservation of organic materials that normally decay within decades or centuries, thanks to the unique chemical makeup of the pond where the burials took place. Archaeologists found intact human brains, woven fabrics, and wooden tools that offered an intimate look at the daily lives of people who lived at the dawn of civilization. The discovery started simply enough. Heavy equipment operators noticed what looked like human skulls in the mud at the bottom of a pond they were draining. Early investigation showed that this wasn't just a few scattered remains, but a well-organized cemetery containing the burials of over 60 individuals spanning more than 1,000 years of use. But when researchers began studying the remains more closely, they realized they had come across something never seen before in North American archaeology. The oxygen-free conditions at the bottom of the pond had preserved organic materials in ways that seemed almost miraculous. Human brains, still containing intact neurons and cellular structures, were recovered from skulls that had been buried for 8,000 years. This level of preservation is almost unheard of in archaeology. Yet, here it was, giving researchers genetic material that could unlock secrets about the origins and movements of ancient American peoples. DNA analysis of the Windover remains produced results that surprised everyone. The genetic signatures didn't match those of any known Native American populations. Instead, they suggested connections to people from across the Pacific, raising questions about how and when the Americas were first settled. Some researchers believe the Windover people might represent a separate migration to the Americas, one that happened earlier than the commonly accepted Bering Land Bridge crossing. Others suggest they might be descendants of ancient Pacific sailors who reached the Americas by sea routes that have been lost to history. The textiles found at Windover are just as remarkable. Woven from plant fibers using advanced techniques, some of these fabrics are among the oldest known examples of weaving in North America. The complexity of the weaving patterns suggests that textile production was already a highly developed craft among these ancient people. But perhaps most intriguingly, some of the textile patterns bear striking similarities to weaving traditions found in other parts of the world, including Asia and the Pacific Islands. This has led some researchers to wonder about possible cultural links or shared ancestry that predates known historical contact between these regions. The wooden artifacts from Windover include tools, weapons, and decorative objects that show impressive craftsmanship. Some pieces show signs of advanced carving techniques and artistic traditions that were far more developed than previously thought possible for people of this time period. Among the most puzzling discoveries are wooden stakes that appear to have been used to anchor the bodies in place during burial. These stakes were driven deep into the pond bottom with such care and purpose that they suggest a well-developed burial ritual and possibly a sophisticated understanding of preservation methods. The arrangement of the burials themselves tells a story of complex social structure and spiritual beliefs. Bodies were carefully wrapped in fabrics and placed in specific positions, suggesting elaborate funeral rites and possibly beliefs about the afterlife that were more advanced than what is typically attributed to hunter-gatherer societies. Carbon dating of the organic materials has confirmed the site's incredible age, but it has also revealed something puzzling. The dates don't form a neat chronological sequence, as you might expect. Instead, they seem to group around specific time periods, with gaps that suggest the site may have been abandoned and reused multiple times over the centuries. Some researchers see this pattern as evidence of climate-driven migrations, with the Windover people moving to and from the site in response to changing environmental conditions. Others suggest it might point to periodic ritual use of the site, with people returning to bury their dead in this sacred place, even when they lived elsewhere. The preservation at Windover has also allowed researchers to study ancient diets and health in incredible detail. Analysis of stomach contents, preserved waste, and bone chemistry has shown that these ancient Floridians had a remarkably varied and advanced diet that included not only local plants and animals, but also resources that had to be brought in from considerable distances. Evidence of long-distance trade or travel is abundant in the Windover remains. Materials that could only have come from hundreds of miles away point to either extensive trade networks or remarkable mobility among these ancient people. This challenges standard ideas about the settled nature of early hunter-gatherer societies. The site has also produced evidence of advanced medical knowledge. Some skeletons show signs of successful surgical procedures, including trepanation, the practice of drilling holes in the skull to relieve pressure or treat injury. The precision of these procedures and evidence of healing suggests that the Wendover people had sophisticated medical skills. Chapter 5. The Catacombs of Miami. Beneath the shining skyline of modern Miami lies a network of tunnels and rooms that few people know about, and even fewer have explored. These underground passages, discovered during construction projects and infrastructure work, hint at a hidden history that official records seem hesitant to acknowledge. The first reports of unusual underground structures in the Miami area started appearing in the 1960s during the construction boom that turned the city from a small coastal town into a major metropolitan center. Construction workers digging foundations for high-rise buildings began coming across worked stone passages and rooms that clearly predated any known settlement in the area. Unlike natural limestone caves, which are common in Florida's geology, these passages showed clear signs of human construction. Walls had been deliberately carved and shaped, floors had been leveled and paved, and in some cases, the rooms were linked by passages that seemed to follow a deliberate design. The discovery that sparked the most controversy happened in 1981 during construction of a downtown Miami office building. Workers broke through into what appeared to be a large underground chamber containing several smaller rooms connected by narrow hallways. The walls were covered with carved symbols that bore no resemblance to any known Native American rock carvings. According to reports from workers at the site, the chamber contained what looked like stone furniture, including raised platforms that might have served as altars or tables, and carved niches in the walls that could have held offerings or ceremonial objects. Most remarkably, some of the carvings seemed to glow with a faint phosphorescence when lit with flashlights, before archaeological authorities could properly investigate the site. However, it was filled with concrete and built over. Official records of the discovery are sparse, and attempts to find the exact location for further study have been unsuccessful. This pattern of discovery, followed by immediate destruction or concealment, has happened many times in the Miami area. Construction workers have reported finding similar chambers during the excavation of parking garages, subway tunnels, and building foundations throughout downtown. In most cases, these discoveries are quickly covered up or dismissed as natural formations, despite clear evidence of artificial construction. One of the most detailed accounts comes from a construction foreman who worked on several downtown projects in the 1980s. He reported finding not just individual chambers, but what seemed to be an extensive network of connected passages that stretched for miles beneath the city. According to this witness, some of the passages were large enough to drive a truck through, while others were barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through. The passages seemed to follow the natural lay of the land, but in a way that suggested deliberate planning and construction rather than natural formation. The foreman also reported finding what appeared to be ventilation shafts and drainage systems that kept the passages remarkably dry despite their location below the water table. This suggests an understanding of underground water management that would be impressive even by modern standards. Perhaps most intriguingly, he claimed that some of the passages contained artifacts that were quickly removed by unidentified officials before a construction crews could examine them closely. These artifacts allegedly included carved stone objects, metal tools, and what appeared to be written inscriptions on stone tablets. The existence of these tunnels has drawn the attention of several underground researchers and urban explorers, though accessing them has proven extremely difficult. Most known entrances have been sealed or built over, and the few that remain accessible are heavily secured or located in areas where exploration would be dangerous or illegal. Some researchers have suggested that the Miami tunnel system might be connected to similar underground structures found in other parts of Florida and the southeastern United States. If true, this would point to a vast network of prehistoric construction that challenges everything we know about ancient American civilizations. The official position is that these reported discoveries are either mistaken identifications of natural limestone formations or greatly exaggerated accounts of minor archaeological finds. However, the consistency of the reports and the clear evidence of deliberate construction in the few documented cases suggest that something significant lies beneath Miami's streets. Geological surveys of the Miami area have revealed numerous underground voids and chambers that don't match known natural cave systems. While some of these might be natural formations, others show characteristics that suggest artificial digging or modification. Ground-penetrating radar studies done by utility companies and city planners have detected what appear to be regular patterns of voids beneath downtown. These patterns seem too systematic to be natural, suggesting that at least some of the reported underground structures are real. The question remains, Who built these passages? When were they constructed? And why has their existence been so consistently hidden? Some researchers have suggested links to ancient Native American cultures, while others propose more unusual explanations involving lost civilizations or even extraterrestrial activity. Chapter 6: The Devil's Den Mystery. North of Gainesville, hidden in the rolling hills of Levy County, lies one of Florida's most puzzling geological formations. Devil's Den, despite its frightening name, looks like nothing more than a sinkhole filled with crystal-clear spring water. But beneath its deceptively simple surface lies a mystery that has confused geologists, archaeologists, and divers for decades. The formation itself is unusual enough. A perfectly round opening in the ground that drops into darkness, filled with water so clear that divers report feeling as if they're flying rather than swimming. The walls of the cavern are lined with ancient limestone formations that create an almost church-like atmosphere below the surface. But what makes Devil's Den truly mysterious are the discoveries that have been made in its depths. Over the years, divers have recovered artifacts and remains that seem to tell a story far more complex than the simple geological explanation would suggest. The first unusual discovery was made in the 1960s, when a diver exploring the deeper parts of the cavern found what looked like worked stone tools at a depth of over 100 feet. These tools, carved from non-local stone, showed clear signs of human manufacture and use. Yet they were found in sediment layers that suggested they had been there for thousands of years. More puzzling still, the tools showed a level of skill that exceeded what was expected for the time period indicated by their geological setting. Some showed signs of advanced flaking techniques and had wear patterns that suggested they had been used for tasks requiring considerable skill and precision. Later archaeological work has revealed even more intriguing finds. Bone fragments discovered in the deeper parts of the cavern have been identified as belonging to extinct giant animals that supposedly disappeared from Florida thousands of years before humans arrived in the region. Yet mixed with these ancient animal bones are clear signs of human activity. Cut marks that suggest butchering, fire-altered bones that indicate cooking, and arrangements that seem too organized to be natural. This suggests that humans were present in Florida much earlier than conventional archaeology accepts, and that they were capable of hunting animals that mainstream science claims were extinct before human arrival. The geological features of Devil's Den also present puzzles that challenge standard understanding. The cavern extends far deeper than most similar formations in the region, with some passages reaching depths that haven't been fully explored, despite decades of diving trips. More mysteriously, the water temperature in different parts of the cavern varies in ways that don't match normal thermal patterns. While most of the cavern maintains a steady temperature, typical of spring water, certain areas are noticeably warmer or cooler, for no obvious geological reason. Divers have also reported unusual acoustic properties within the cavern. Sounds seem to travel differently in various parts of the cave system, with some areas producing echoes that last much longer than the physical size of the space would suggest possible. The most mysterious aspect of Devil's Den, however, might be the reports of strange magnetic readings throughout the cavern system. Compass readings vary significantly from one area to another, and electronic equipment sometimes malfunctions in specific locations within the cave. Some researchers have suggested that these magnetic anomalies might be caused by metal deposits in the surrounding rock. But geological surveys have failed to find any such deposits in large enough quantity to explain the observed effects. The biological ecosystem of Devil's Den also presents mysteries. The cavern supports species of aquatic life that aren't found in other similar formations in the region. Some of these species appear to be evolutionary leftovers, creatures that have survived in the isolated environment of the cavern, while their relatives in the outside world went extinct. Most intriguingly, genetic analysis of some of these species has revealed DNA sequences that don't match any known relatives, suggesting that they might represent unique evolutionary paths that developed in isolation within the cavern system. Cave diving trips in recent years have used advanced sonar and underwater photography to map previously unexplored sections of the cavern. These surveys have revealed additional chambers and passages that extend much further than previously known, including some that appear to connect to other cave systems in the region. In one of these newly discovered chambers, divers found what appears to be a collection of stone objects arranged in a deliberate pattern on the cavern floor. The objects, which include both carved and natural stones, are arranged in what some researchers interpret as a ceremonial or ritualistic design. The arrangement includes a central circular pattern surrounded by smaller groupings of stones, all positioned with a precision that would be difficult to achieve underwater without sophisticated equipment. Yet, the sediment layers suggest that these stones have been in place for centuries. long before modern diving technology made such precise underwater work possible. Chapter 7. The Lake Okeechobee. In the vast expanse of Lake Okeechobee, Florida's largest freshwater lake, lie secrets that most visitors never suspect. Beneath the murky waters, carved into limestone outcrops that are only occasionally exposed during extreme drought conditions, are petroglyphs that challenge our understanding of Florida's ancient past. These rock carvings were first documented in the early 1900s, when an unusually severe drought lowered the lake's water level to historically low points. What emerged from the receding waters were limestone formations covered with intricate carvings that bore little resemblance to known Native American rock art traditions. The petroglyphs include a bewildering variety of symbols, spirals, geometric patterns, human-like figures, and what appear to be astronomical symbols. Some of the carvings are enormous, stretching across entire rock faces, while others are tiny and detailed, requiring close examination to appreciate their complexity. What makes these petroglyphs particularly mysterious is their apparent age. The limestone formations on which they're carved show signs of being submerged for long periods, with mineral deposits and water erosion patterns that suggest they've been underwater for centuries or even millennia. Yet the carvings themselves show different degrees of weathering, suggesting they were created at different times and possibly by different cultures. Some appear fresh and sharp, as if carved relatively recently, while others are so worn they're barely visible. Dr. Robert Schock, a geologist from Boston University who has studied the site, has suggested that some of the more weathered carvings might be significantly older than previously thought. His analysis of the weathering patterns indicates that certain petroglyphs could be thousands of years old, placing them in a time period when the area would have been dry land. The content of the petroglyphs is equally puzzling. Many of the symbols don't match any known Native American traditions from the region. Instead, they show similarities to rock art found in diverse locations around the world, including Australia, South America, and even Europe. One particularly intriguing set of carvings appears to show astronomical events. These include what seem to be depictions of solar eclipses, planetary alignments, and star patterns that some researchers believe match specific astronomical arrangements that occurred thousands of years ago. The accuracy of these astronomical depictions suggests that whoever created them had advanced knowledge of celestial movements and was capable of long-term observations and record-keeping. This level of astronomical sophistication is not typically associated with the hunter-gatherer cultures that supposedly lived in Florida in prehistoric times. Among the most controversial discoveries are petroglyphs that some researchers claim show evidence of contact with Old World civilizations. These include symbols that bear resemblance to ancient Mediterranean scripts, Egyptian hieroglyphs, and even what some interpret as Nordic runes. While mainstream archaeology rejects these interpretations, the similarities are striking enough to have drawn serious academic attention. Dr. Berryfell, despite the controversy surrounding his work, identified several symbols that he believed represented ancient Celtic or Phoenician writing. The petroglyphs also include depictions of animals that add another layer of mystery. Some carvings clearly show species that are native to Florida, including alligators, birds, and various fish. But others appear to show animals that aren't native to the region, including what look like elephants, camels, and other creatures that would be completely out of place in prehistoric Florida. These unusual animal depictions have led some researchers to think about possible connections to periods when Florida's climate was very different. Perhaps during ice ages, when the peninsula's ecosystem might have supported a different range of species. More controversial interpretations suggest that these carvings might represent knowledge of animals from other continents, pointing to long-distance travel or cultural exchange that isn't recognized by conventional archaeology. The method of creation of the petroglyphs presents another puzzle. Many of the carvings show signs of being made with metal tools, displaying clean cuts in exact angles that would be difficult to achieve with stone tools. Yet, the supposed age of some carvings predates the introduction of metalworking to the Americas by thousands of years. Recent underwater archaeological surveys using advanced sonar and underwater photography have revealed that the known petroglyphs represent only a small fraction of the total rock art in Lake Okeechobee. Additional carvings have been discovered in deeper waters, including some that are completely inaccessible during normal water levels. These newly discovered petroglyphs include some of the most complex and elaborate designs found anywhere in Florida. One site features what appears to be a large-scale map or diagram that some researchers interpret as a representation of astronomical relationships or possibly even a star chart. The question of who created these mysterious carvings remains unanswered. The diversity of styles, symbols, and apparent ages suggest that multiple cultures might have used the Lake Okeechobee area as a canvas for their artistic and supposedly religious expressions over thousands of years. Chapter 8. The Tampa Bay Underwater Structures. The waters of Tampa Bay hold secrets that most boaters and swimmers never imagine. Beneath the surface, scattered across the bay floor, lie structures that challenge our understanding of Florida's past and raise questions about civilizations that might have existed when sea levels were much lower than they are today. These underwater anomalies first came to widespread attention in the 1990s when marine archaeologists conducting surveys for shipwrecks began encountering stone formations that appeared too regular and systematic to be natural. Using side-scan, sonar, and underwater photography, researchers documented a series of structures that seemed to follow deliberate patterns across the bay floor. The formations include what appear to be stone walls, circular arrangements of large rocks, and linear features that some researchers interpret as ancient roadways or foundations. The structures are found at various depths throughout the bay, with some located in areas that would have been dry land as recently as 10,000 years ago, when sea levels were much lower. One of the most intriguing discoveries is a series of concentric stone circles found near the mouth of the Hillsborough River. These circles, each approximately 100 feet in diameter, are built from limestone blocks that show clear signs of being deliberately placed and arranged. The precision of the construction is remarkable. The stones are fitted together so closely that gaps between them are tiny, and the circles maintain their geometric shape despite being submerged for thousands of years. This level of construction suggests careful planning and engineering skills. Marine archaeologist Dr. Ryan Duggins, who has studied the Tampa Bay structures extensively, has noted that their construction techniques don't match any known Native American building traditions from the region. The use of large stone blocks fitted together without mortars is more similar to megalithic construction found in other parts of the world. Carbon dating of organic materials found near the structures has provided dates ranging from 6,000 to 12,000 years ago, placing their construction in the period following the last ice age when sea levels were rising rapidly due to melting glaciers. This timing is significant because it suggests that whoever built these structures had to abandon them as rising waters flooded the coastal areas. The implications are enormous. We might be looking at evidence of an advanced coastal civilization that was forced to relocate as their homeland disappeared beneath the waves. The underwater structures aren't limited to simple stone arrangements. Side-scan sonar has revealed what appear to be more complex architectural features, including what some researchers interpret as building foundations, stepped platforms, and even possible harbor installations that might have served ancient maritime activities. One particularly intriguing discovery is a linear stone arrangement that extends for nearly 2 miles across the bay floor. This feature, dubbed the Tampa Bay Road by local researchers, consists of large limestone blocks arranged in a straight line with remarkable precision. The blocks are spaced at regular intervals and show signs of being deliberately shaped and positioned. The engineering required to create such a feature would have been considerable, requiring not only the quarrying and transport of massive stone blocks, but also advanced surveying and construction techniques to maintain the linear precision over such a great distance. What makes this discovery even more mysterious is that similar linear stone arrangements have been found in other underwater locations around the world, including off the coasts of Japan, the Mediterranean, and the Caribbean. This has led some researchers to speculate about possible connections between ancient maritime civilizations that might have shared construction techniques and architectural traditions. The biological evidence from the Tampa Bay structures adds another layer to the mystery. Marine growth patterns on the stones indicate that they've been submerged for thousands of years. But the types of marine organisms found on different structures vary in ways that suggest they were submerged at different times. This pattern could indicate that the structures were built over an extended period as sea levels gradually rose, with later constructions built in shallower water as the older, deeper structures were abandoned to the rising seas. Archaeological excavations of sediment layers around the structures have revealed artifacts that don't fit comfortably into standard timelines of Florida prehistory. These include worked stone tools that show signs of advanced flaking techniques, fragments of what appeared to be ceramic vessels with complex decorative patterns, and most puzzling of all, pieces of worked metal that seem too old for the accepted history of metallurgy in the Americas. The metal artifacts are particularly controversial because they appear to be made from copper alloys that require advanced smelting techniques. Chemical analysis has shown that some of these metal pieces contain trace elements that don't occur naturally in Florida. suggesting that either the raw materials were transported from distant locations, or the objects themselves were made elsewhere and brought to the Tampa Bay area through trade networks. Recent underwater investigations, using advanced robotic submarines, have revealed even more complex structures in the deeper parts of the bay. These include what appear to be multi-level platforms, stepped constructions that some researchers compare to ancient pyramids or ziggurats, and circular arrangements of stones that might have served ceremonial or astronomical purposes. One of the most remarkable discoveries is an underwater chamber that appears to have been deliberately built as an enclosed space. The chamber, built from large stone slabs fitted together to form walls and a roof, is partially filled with sediment, but still contains an air pocket that has been preserved for thousands of years. Divers who have entered this chamber report finding carved symbols on the interior walls, including geometric patterns and what appeared to be pictographic representations. The preservation of these carvings in the protected environment of the chamber is remarkable, providing a rare glimpse into the artistic and possibly religious traditions of the structure's builders. The symbols found in the chamber don't match any known Native American rock art traditions from the region. Instead, they show similarities to ancient writing systems from various parts of the world, raising questions about possible cultural connections or shared symbolic traditions among ancient peoples. Chapter 9. The Everglades Tree Islands Mystery. Deep within the vast wilderness of the Everglades, scattered like emeralds across the endless sea of sawgrass, lie hundreds of tree islands that hold secrets far more profound than their peaceful appearance suggests. These elevated patches of tropical hardwood forest, rising just a few feet above the surrounding marsh, are home to archaeological mysteries that challenge everything we thought we knew about the ancient peoples of South Florida. At first glance, these tree islands appear to be nothing more than natural ecological formations, the result of slight differences in elevation that allowed different plant communities to establish themselves in the wetland environment. But closer examination reveals that many of these islands are far from natural. They're the product of advanced engineering and construction by peoples whose capabilities have been greatly underestimated by mainstream archaeology. The mystery begins with the islands themselves. While some are clearly natural formations, others show clear signs of artificial construction and modification. Archaeological surveys have shown that many tree islands contain massive shell mounds, artificial platforms, and earthworks that required the transport and placement of millions of tons of material over periods spanning centuries or even millennia. The scale of construction is staggering. Some tree islands contain shell mounds that rise over 20 feet above the surrounding marsh and cover areas of several acres. To create these artificial islands, ancient peoples had to transport countless tons of shells, soil, and other materials through the challenging environment of the Everglades using only simple tools and watercraft. But what makes this achievement even more remarkable is the precision and planning evident in the construction. Many tree islands are arranged in patterns that suggest careful planning, possibly astronomical alignments. Some form linear arrangements that stretch for miles across the marsh, while others are positioned to create geometric patterns that are only visible when viewed from above. Dr. Michael Russo, an archaeologist who has spent decades studying the Everglades tree islands, has documented evidence of advanced hydraulic engineering that controlled water flow around and through the islands. Ancient builders created channels, berms, and other water management features that allowed them to control flooding and maintain dry areas for living, even during the wettest periods. This level of environmental engineering suggests that the ancient peoples of the Everglades had knowledge and skills that far exceeded what has been traditionally attributed to hunter-gatherer societies. They weren't simply adapting to their environment. They were actively changing it on a massive scale to meet their needs. The artifacts recovered from tree island excavations tell a story of cultural sophistication that challenges standard archaeological timelines. Carved wood artifacts preserved in the oxygen-free conditions of the marsh show evidence of advanced woodworking techniques and artistic traditions that were far more developed than previously suspected. Among the most intriguing discoveries are wooden posts and platforms that show signs of advanced joinery techniques, including mortise and tenon joints that were supposedly unknown in prehistoric America. The precision of these joints and the engineering principles they represent suggest contact with old world building traditions or the independent development of advanced carpentry skills. The organic preservation conditions in the Everglades have also yielded textiles that rival those found at the Windover site in their sophistication and age. Some of these fabrics show weaving patterns and decorative techniques that don't match any known Native American traditions from the region, raising questions about possible cultural connections to distant peoples. Perhaps most mysteriously, some tree islands have produced evidence of metalworking that predates accepted timelines for metal use in the Americas. Small copper and bronze artifacts have been found in contexts that suggest they were made locally rather than obtained through trade. With post-contact European settlements, chemical analysis of these metal artifacts has revealed alloy compositions that match techniques used in ancient Europe and Asia. But the archaeological contexts clearly predate any known European contact with the region. This has led some researchers to think about possible pre-Columbian contact between Old World and Everglades cultures. The astronomical alignments of many tree islands add another dimension to the mystery. Detailed surveys have shown that numerous islands are positioned to mark important solar and lunar events, including solstices, equinoxes, and complex lunar cycles that require long-term observation and advanced mathematical understanding to predict. Some researchers have identified what appear to be elaborate astronomical calendars encoded in the positions and arrangements of tree islands across vast areas of the Everglades. These calendar systems demonstrate knowledge of celestial movements that match the achievements of ancient civilizations in other parts of the world. The biological evidence from tree islands also presents puzzles. Many islands support plant and animal communities that seem out of place in the Everglades environment. Some contain species that are typically found hundreds of miles away, suggesting either dramatic climate changes in the past or human introduction of non-native species. Most intriguingly, some tree islands contain evidence of ancient agricultural practices that don't fit standard ideas about Everglades peoples, as primarily archaeological remains of what appear to be cultivated plants, including varieties that aren't native to Florida, suggest that tree island inhabitants were engaged in advanced agriculture and possibly plant breeding. Ground-penetrating radar surveys of tree islands have revealed subsurface features that suggest even more complex construction than is visible on the surface. Some islands appeared to contain buried structures, including what might be foundation walls, underground chambers, and extensive drainage systems that extend deep into the underlying limestone. These subsurface features have been particularly difficult to investigate because of the challenging conditions in the Everglades. But early explorations have revealed carved stone elements and architectural features that don't match any known building traditions from the region. Recent LiDAR surveys conducted from aircraft have revealed the true extent of artificial modification in the Everglades. The technology has identified hundreds of previously unknown earthworks, including massive linear features that stretch for dozens of miles across the landscape and complex geometric patterns that are invisible from ground level. The scale and sophistication of these earthworks suggest that the ancient Everglades supported much larger and more organized populations than previously imagined. We're not looking at the scattered campsites of small hunter-gatherer bands, but evidence of a complex civilization that engineered the landscape on a scale that matches the achievements of ancient peoples in other parts of the world. Chapter 10. The St. Augustine Anomalies. St. Augustine, America's oldest city, carries the weight of over 450 years of recorded history, but beneath its well-documented Spanish colonial past lie mysteries that suggest the area's human story stretches much further back than anyone officially admits. Hidden under centuries of building and rebuilding are archaeological anomalies that challenge the accepted story of Florida's early settlement. The mystery begins with the very foundations of the historic city. During renovations and construction projects throughout St. Augustine's historic district, workers have repeatedly encountered stone foundations and structures that clearly predate the Spanish settlement of 1565. These foundations show construction techniques and architectural features that don't match any known Spanish colonial building methods. In the 1970s, during the restoration of a historic building on St. George Street, workers discovered a foundation made from massive limestone blocks, fitted together with a precision that impressed modern engineers. The blocks were joined without mortar, yet the joints were so tight that water couldn't seep between them. What made this discovery particularly puzzling was that the construction technique didn't match Spanish colonial methods, which typically used smaller stones and mortar. Instead, the foundation resembled megalithic construction found in ancient European sites, with blocks weighing several tons each, fitted together with remarkable precision. Carbon dating of organic materials found within the foundation mortar provided dates that were several centuries older than the Spanish settlement, suggesting that substantial stone construction was taking place in the St. Augustine area long before any Europeans were supposed to have arrived. Similar discoveries have been made throughout the historic district, but most have been covered up or explained away as misidentified Spanish colonial remains. However, The consistency of the reports and the clear differences in construction techniques suggest that something significant is being overlooked or deliberately ignored. The most controversial discovery occurred in 1987 during the construction of a packing garage near the historic fort. Workers broke through into what appeared to be a large underground chamber built from carefully fitted stone blocks. The chamber contained carved stone furniture and walls covered with symbols that bore no resemblance to any known European or Native American traditions. According to reports from the construction site, the chamber also contained what appeared to be metal artifacts, including items that looked like tools or weapons made from an unknown alloy, before archaeological authorities could properly investigate. However, the chamber was filled with concrete and the construction project continued. The official explanation was that the workers had encountered a natural limestone cave that had been modified by early Spanish settlers. However, photographs taken by workers before the site was sealed show construction techniques and architectural features that don't match any known Spanish colonial building methods. Archaeological investigations in other parts of St. Augustine have revealed additional anomalies. Excavations for utility installations have uncovered layered deposits that contain artifacts from multiple time periods, including some that seem to predate any known occupation of the area. Among the most puzzling finds are stone tools and weapons that show advanced manufacturing techniques, but are found in archaeological contexts that predate the introduction of such technologies to the Americas. These include perfectly symmetrical stone points that would require advanced flaking skills and metal tools that show evidence of sophisticated metallurgy. The pottery fragments found in some of these excavations also present mysteries. While some clearly belong to known Native American traditions, others show decorative patterns and manufacturing techniques that don't match any recognized cultural traditions from the region. Some pottery fragments show evidence of wheel manufacture, a technique that wasn't supposed to have been known in the Americas before European contact. The clay used in some pieces also contains mineral inclusions that don't occur naturally in the St. Augustine area, suggesting either long-distance trade or the movement of peoples from distant regions. The Spanish colonial records themselves contain hints that the area's history might be more complex than officially acknowledged. Early Spanish explorers reported finding stone ruins and abandoned settlements that appeared to be of considerable age when they arrived. Some Spanish accounts describe encounters with Native American groups who claimed that their ancestors had learned building techniques from bearded strangers who arrived from across the sea long before the Spanish. While these accounts are often dismissed as folklore or misunderstandings, their consistency across multiple sources suggests they might contain grains of historical truth. The architectural anomalies aren't limited to foundations and underground structures. Several buildings in the historic district show construction features that seem out of place for their supposed time periods. These include stone carving techniques, architectural proportions, and decorative elements that don't match known Spanish colonial styles. One building in particular, now housing a museum, contains stone carvings that several art historians have noted bear striking similarities to medieval European church architecture. The level of craftsmanship and the specific decorative patterns suggest influence from architectural traditions that weren't supposed to have reached the Americas until much later. Ground-penetrating radar surveys done for infrastructure planning have revealed extensive subsurface structures throughout the historic district. Many of these buried features are much larger and more complex than would be expected for a small Spanish colonial settlement, suggesting that St. Augustine might have been built on the site of a much more substantial earlier settlement. The radar surveys have also identified what appear to be tunnel systems connecting various parts of the historic district. While some of these might be natural limestone caves, others show characteristics that suggest artificial digging and modification. Recent archaeological work associated with restoration projects has provided opportunities for more systematic investigation of the pre-Spanish occupation evidence. While much of this work remains unpublished, early reports suggest that the anomalies are more extensive and significant than previously recognized. Researchers have documented clear evidence of multiple occupation phases predating the Spanish settlement, including some that show advanced construction techniques and cultural traditions that don't match any known regional archaeological patterns. The question remains, who were these earlier occupants, and why has evidence of their presence been so consistently overlooked or suppressed? The implications for understanding Florida's early history, and possibly the broader story of human settlement in the Americas, could be profound. Chapter 11. The Bermuda Triangle Connection. No discussion of Florida's mysteries would be complete without addressing the elephant in the room, the Bermuda Triangle. While popular culture has turned this region into a sensationalized topic, filled with wild speculation about alien abductions and time warps, The sober truth is that there are indeed documented anomalies in this area that deserve serious scientific consideration. The Bermuda Triangle, roughly defined by points at Miami, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico, encompasses a vast area of ocean that has been the site of numerous unexplained disappearances, navigational anomalies, and strange phenomena reported by pilots, sailors, and researchers over the decades. What's often overlooked in popular discussions is that many of the most credible reports come from experienced maritime and aviation professionals, people whose livelihoods depend on accurate navigation and whose testimonies carry considerable weight in their respective fields. Captain Bruce Gernon, an experienced pilot who has flown in the region for decades, reported one of the most detailed and puzzling encounters in 1970. While flying from Andros Island to Palm Beach, Gernon encountered what he described as an elliptical cloud that seemed to swallow his aircraft. According to Gernon's account, his instruments began malfunctioning as he entered the cloud, with his compass spinning wildly and his electronics producing readings that made no sense. Most remarkably, he claims that what should have been a 75-minute flight took only 47 minutes, as if he had somehow traveled through time or space in a way that conventional physics couldn't explain. Gernon's experience might sound like science fiction, but similar reports have come from numerous other pilots and sea captains over the years. These accounts typically involve electronic equipment malfunctions, compass anomalies, and time distortions that suggest something unusual about the electromagnetic or gravitational environment in this region. The U.S. Coast Guard, which has responsibility for search and rescue operations in the area, maintains detailed records of maritime incidents and has documented numerous cases where ships and aircraft have simply vanished without a trace, leaving no debris or distress signals to indicate what happened. While the Coast Guard officially maintains that the disappearance rate in the Bermuda Triangle is no higher than in other heavily traveled areas of ocean, the specific characteristics of many disappearances are unusual enough to have drawn serious scientific attention. Dr. Richard McKiver, a geologist studying the ocean floor in the region, has identified massive methane hydrate deposits beneath the seafloor that could potentially create conditions dangerous to ships and aircraft. When these deposits destabilize, they can release enormous quantities of methane gas that would reduce the density of seawater and create atmospheric conditions that could cause aircraft engines to fail. This geological explanation could account for some of the mysterious disappearances, but it doesn't address the numerous reports of electromagnetic anomalies and navigational problems that don't result in disappearances, but simply cause confusion and equipment malfunctions. The magnetic characteristics of the region have been the subject of extensive study by the National Ocean Service and other research organizations. The area is known to be one of the few places on Earth where magnetic north and true north align, which can cause compass readings to vary significantly from what navigators expect. But even accounting for known magnetic variations, pilots and mariners report compass behavior that doesn't match any known magnetic phenomena. Compasses spinning wildly, electronic navigation systems providing contradictory readings, and GPS devices losing satellite signals are commonly reported experiences in the region. The underwater geography of the Bermuda Triangle region is also unusual, with deep ocean trenches, underwater mountain ranges, and complex current systems that could create unique environmental conditions. The Puerto Rico Trench, one of the deepest parts of the Atlantic Ocean, lies within the triangle and creates complex current patterns that could affect both surface and atmospheric conditions. Some researchers have suggested that the combination of deep ocean trenches, complex current systems, and unusual magnetic properties could create a kind of natural laboratory where electromagnetic and gravitational forces interact in ways that aren't fully understood by current science. The possibility that ancient structures or technological artifacts might exist on the ocean floor in this region adds another dimension to the mystery. If the underwater ruins near Bimini and other locations represent remnants of advanced ancient civilizations, it's possible that other such structures exist in the deeper waters of the Bermuda Triangle. Some speculative researchers have suggested that ancient technological artifacts, possibly created by unknown civilizations, might still be active on the ocean floor, creating electromagnetic fields or other phenomena that interfere with modern navigation and communication equipment. While such theories remain highly speculative, the documented reports of unusual phenomena in the region are extensive enough to warrant serious scientific investigation. The challenge is separating legitimate anomalies from sensationalized accounts and conducting the kind of systematic research that could identify the true causes of the unusual experiences reported in the area. Recent advances in ocean floor mapping and electromagnetic surveying technology have provided new tools for investigating the Bermuda Triangle region. Detailed bathymetric surveys have revealed previously unknown geological features, while magnetic and gravitational surveys have identified areas where the Earth's fields behave in unusual ways. Some of these surveys have identified what appear to be artificial structures on the ocean floor, including geometric formations that don't correspond to known geological processes. While most of these are probably natural features that happen to have regular shapes, some show characteristics that suggest they might warrant closer investigation. The truth about the Bermuda Triangle probably lies somewhere between the sensationalized popular accounts and the dismissive official explanations. There do appear to be legitimate anomalies in the region that deserve scientific attention, but they are probably the result of complex interactions between known natural phenomena, rather than supernatural or extraterrestrial causes. Understanding these anomalies could provide insights, not only into the specific mysteries of the Bermuda Triangle, but also into broader questions about electromagnetic phenomena, ocean atmospheric interactions, and the complex ways that geological features can influence navigation and communication systems. Chapter 12. The Spook Hill Phenomenon. In the small town of Lake Wales, Florida, sits one of the state's most enduring mysteries, Spook Hill, a place where the laws of physics seem to take a holiday, and cars roll uphill in apparent defiance of gravity. While skeptics dismiss it as an optical illusion, the phenomenon has puzzled visitors and researchers for decades, and the true explanation might be more complex than either believers or debunkers are willing to admit. The story of Spook Hill begins with local Native American legends that speak of a great battle between a large alligator and a great chief. According to the legend, the chief was defending his village from the beast when both fighters died in their final struggle. The hill, it's said, is haunted by the spirit of the chief, who continues to protect visitors by pushing their cars to safety. While the legend provides a colorful backstory, the physical phenomenon is real enough to have attracted the attention of engineers, physicists, and researchers who have attempted to provide scientific explanations for what visitors experience. The basic phenomenon is straightforward. When you stop your car at the bottom of the hill and put it in neutral, the vehicle will begin to roll backward up the hill, apparently defying gravity. The effect is strong enough to overcome the friction of the tires and can propel a car several hundred feet up the incline. The conventional explanation is that Spook Hill is an example of a gravity hill or magnetic hill, an optical illusion created by the surrounding landscape that makes a downhill slope appear to be uphill. According to this theory, cars aren't actually rolling uphill against gravity. They're rolling downhill as normal, but the visual context makes it appear otherwise. This explanation is supported by the fact that similar phenomena exist at locations around the world, and many have been explained as optical illusions created by specific combinations of terrain features that confuse human depth perception and spatial orientation. However, careful surveying of Spook Hill using precision instruments has revealed some puzzling aspects that don't fit neatly into the optical illusion explanation. While the overall slope of the road does indeed decline in the direction that cars roll, there are sections where the grade clearly slopes upward, yet cars continue to roll in defiance of gravity. Dr. James Kakalios, a physicist from the University of Minnesota who has studied anomalous sites like Spook Hill, has noted that while optical illusions can explain many gravity hills, some locations show effects that seem to require additional explanation. Magnetic surveys of the Spook Hill area have revealed unusual patterns in the local magnetic field that could potentially influence metallic objects like automobiles. While the magnetic anomalies aren't strong enough to visibly pull cars uphill, they might create subtle forces that contribute to the phenomenon when combined with other factors. The geological characteristics of the area also present some interesting features. The hill sits on a unique combination of limestone formations and iron-rich clay deposits that create complex subsurface structures. Some researchers have suggested that these geological features might create localized gravitational anomalies or other physical effects that contribute to the observed phenomenon. Seismic surveys of the area have revealed underground voids and cavern systems that could potentially affect local gravitational fields. While such effects would be extremely small and difficult to measure with standard equipment, they might be enough to influence the behavior of objects at the surface when combined with other factors. The most puzzling aspect of Spook Hill might be the consistency of the effect. Unlike optical illusions, which can vary depending on lighting conditions, weather, and individual perception, the Spook Hill phenomenon works reliably, regardless of these variables. Cars roll up the hill in bright sunlight, or total darkness, in clear weather or fog, and the effect is observed by people with vastly different visual capabilities and expectations. This consistency suggests that whatever causes the phenomenon is a genuine physical effect, rather than simply a perceptual illusion. The challenge is identifying what physical mechanism could create forces strong enough to overcome gravity and friction, but subtle enough to escape detection by standard scientific instruments. Some researchers have suggested that Spook Hill might be influenced by electromagnetic fields generated by underground geological features. Certain types of rock formations can create weak but measurable electromagnetic effects, and these fields could theoretically interact with the metallic components of automobiles in ways that create small but noticeable forces. Another possibility is that the phenomenon involves complex interactions between multiple natural forces that individually would be too weak to cause the observed effects, but in combination create a measurable result. Such interactions might involve subtle combinations of magnetic fields, gravitational variations, electrostatic effects, and even atmospheric pressure changes. The biological effects reported by some visitors to Spook Hill add another dimension to the mystery. Some people report feeling dizzy, nauseous, or disoriented while at the site, symptoms that could indicate exposure to electromagnetic fields, infrasound, or other environmental factors that aren't immediately apparent. Electronic equipment also sometimes behaves oddly at Spook Hill, with compass readings varying from expected values and some visitors reporting that their cell phones or GPS devices produce unusual readings while at the site. Recent attempts to study Spook Hill using advanced scientific equipment have been complicated by the site's popularity as a tourist attraction and the difficulty of conducting controlled experiments in an environment where numerous variables can't be controlled. However, early studies using sensitive magnetometers and electromagnetic field detectors have identified subtle anomalies in the local environment that might contribute to the observed phenomenon. While these anomalies are small, they're consistent and measurable, suggesting that Spook Hill might indeed involve genuine physical effects rather than simply optical illusion. The truth about Spook Hill probably involves a complex combination of factors, including both perceptual illusions and genuine physical phenomena. Understanding these interactions could provide insights into how human perception works and how subtle environmental factors can create seemingly impossible effects. Chapter 13. The Florida Bigfoot Enigma. Florida's vast wilderness areas, from the dense swamps of the Everglades to the thick forests of the Panhandle, have long been home to reports of large bipedal creatures that don't fit into any known category of wildlife. The Florida Bigfoot, known locally as the skunk ape, due to its reported strong odor, represents one of the most persistent cryptozoological mysteries in the southeastern United States. Unlike the Pacific Northwest Sasquatch, which is typically described as a massive hair-covered humanoid living in mountainous forest environments, the Florida skunk ape is said to be adapted to wetland environments, with reports describing a creature that's equally at home in water and on land. The first documented reports of unusual bipedal creatures in Florida date back to the early Spanish colonial period, when explorers wrote about encounters with large hair-covered beings that walked upright but were clearly not human. These early accounts were often dismissed as misidentifications of bears or exaggerated stories about Native Americans. But the consistency of the descriptions across different time periods and geographical areas suggests that something genuine was being observed. Modern sightings of the Florida skunk ape began to accumulate in the 1960s, as increased development and recreational use of Florida's wilderness areas brought more people into potential contact with whatever creatures might inhabit these remote regions. The reports typically describe a bipedal creature standing between 7 and 8 feet tall, covered in reddish-brown or black hair, with a strong, unpleasant odor reminiscent of rotten eggs or sulfur. One of the most credible series of sightings occurred in the 1970s. In the area around the Big Cypress National Preserve, multiple witnesses, including park rangers and wildlife biologists, reported encounters with large bipedal creatures that exhibited behavior patterns unlike any known animals in the region. Robert Beatty, a wildlife biologist who worked in the Everglades during this period, documented several encounters with creatures that he couldn't identify using standard classification. According to his reports, these animals showed intelligence and problem-solving abilities that exceeded what would be expected from known primates. Yet, their physical characteristics didn't match any recognized species. The footprint evidence from Florida skunk ape encounters has been particularly intriguing. Casts made from tracks found in soft mud show feet that are distinctly different from human prints, but also unlike those of any known animals in the region. The prints typically show 5 toes, with what appear to be claw marks. and the gait patterns suggest a bipedal creature with a much longer stride than a human. Perhaps most remarkably, some of the footprint casts show what appear to be webbing between the toes, suggesting adaptation to an aquatic or semi-aquatic lifestyle. This would make sense given the wetland environment where most sightings occur, but it represents a combination of traits that doesn't exist in any known primate species. The photographic evidence for Florida skunk apes has been limited, but occasionally compelling. The most famous images were taken in 2000 by an anonymous photographer who claimed to have encountered a family group of the creatures near his home in Up. The photographs show what appears to be a large hair-covered bipedal creature with distinctly non-human proportions and facial features, while skeptics have suggested that the photographs show someone in a costume. Detailed analysis by experts in photographic manipulation has failed to identify clear evidence of fakery. The creature's proportions, the way light reflects off its hair, and the natural positioning all suggest that the images might be genuine documentation of an unknown species. The behavior patterns described in skunk ape encounters are also distinctive and consistent across multiple sightings. Witnesses typically report that the creatures are primarily nocturnal, highly intelligent, and seem to possess an almost supernatural ability to avoid human contact when they choose to do so. Many encounters involve the creatures apparently observing humans from a distance, showing curiosity about human activities, but generally avoiding direct contact. This behavior pattern is consistent with what might be expected from a highly intelligent primate species that has learned to coexist with human presence while maintaining its secrecy. The ecological niche that Florida skunk apes would occupy makes biological sense given the environment of South Florida. The region's vast wetlands provide abundant food sources in the form of fish, crustaceans, and aquatic plants, while the dense vegetation provides excellent cover for large animals that prefer to avoid human contact. From an evolutionary perspective, it's possible that a population of large primates could have survived in Florida's remote areas, possibly as relict populations that became isolated during climate changes thousands of years ago. The unique environmental conditions of the Everglades could have selected for traits like semi-aquatic adaptation and enhanced intelligence that would allow survival in this challenging habitat. The connection between skunk ape sightings and ancient Native American traditions adds another dimension to the mystery. Many Florida tribes have legends about large intelligent forest beings that lived alongside humans but preferred to remain hidden. These legends often describe creatures that were neither entirely animal nor entirely human, possessing supernatural abilities and serving as guardians of the natural world. Some researchers have suggested that these traditional stories might represent cultural memories of actual encounters with unknown primate species, passed down through generations of indigenous peoples who shared the landscape with these creatures. The DNA evidence from alleged skunk ape encounters has been limited but occasionally intriguing. Hair samples collected from locations where sightings occurred have sometimes yielded DNA that doesn't match any known species in genetic databases, while most samples turn out to be from known animals or are too degraded for analysis. A few have produced results that suggest the presence of an unknown primate species. One particularly interesting sample collected in 2003 from a location in the Everglades, where multiple sightings had occurred, produced DNA that most closely matched chimpanzee genetic markers, but with significant differences that suggested either a very unusual chimpanzee population or a related but distinct species. The challenge of studying Florida skunk apes is complicated by the vast and inaccessible nature of their supposed habitat. The Everglades alone covers over 1.5 million acres of wetlands, much of which is virtually impossible to access on foot and difficult to survey even with modern technology. Recent attempts to use trail cameras and other remote sensing equipment to document skunk ape activity have had limited success, though some images have captured large bipedal figures that are difficult to explain as misidentified known animals or human hoaxes. The question of whether Florida skunk apes represent a genuine unknown species remains open, but the consistency of reports, the quality of some physical evidence, and the biological plausibility of their existence in Florida's unique ecosystem make them worthy of serious scientific consideration. Chapter 14. The Lightning Anomalies of Central Florida. Central Florida holds an unusual distinction in the world of meteorology. It experiences more lightning strikes per square mile than almost anywhere else on Earth. While this might seem like simply a function of the region's climate and geography, careful analysis of the lightning patterns reveals anomalies that challenge our understanding of atmospheric electricity and suggests that something unusual about this area might be influencing electrical phenomena in ways that science doesn't fully understand. The basic statistics are striking enough on their own, The corridor between Tampa and Orlando experiences an average of 25 lightning strikes per square kilometer per year, compared to a global average of fewer than 5. During the summer months, this region can experience over 100 strikes per square kilometer per day, creating an almost constant display of electrical activity that can be visible from space. But it's not just the frequency of lightning that makes Central Florida unusual. It's the characteristics of the strikes themselves. Lightning researchers have documented unusual patterns of electrical activity that don't fit standard models of atmospheric electricity. Dr. Martin Newman, a professor at the University of Florida who spent decades studying lightning, has noted that Central Florida lightning exhibits several unusual characteristics. These include unusually long-duration strikes, multiple return strokes that exceed typical parameters, and electrical signatures that suggest much higher energy levels than normally observed in lightning phenomena. The geographical distribution of lightning strikes in Central Florida also shows patterns that are difficult to explain using standard meteorological models, rather than being randomly distributed or following simple topographical features. The strikes seem to cluster around specific locations in ways that suggest they're being influenced by factors that aren't accounted for in standard weather prediction models. Some of these lightning clusters correspond to known geological features, such as areas where underground water systems or mineral deposits might affect electrical conductivity. But others occur in locations where no obvious geological explanations exist, suggesting that unknown factors might be influencing electrical activity. The electromagnetic environment of Central Florida has been the subject of extensive study by both meteorological researchers and investigators interested in unexplained phenomena. The region shows unusual patterns of electromagnetic activity that extend beyond just lightning strikes to include unusual radio propagation, magnetic field variations, and electrical effects that impact everything from electronic equipment to biological systems. Power grid operators in Central Florida have long struggled with electrical anomalies that go beyond simple lightning damage. The region experiences unusual patterns of electrical surges, power quality problems, and equipment failures that suggest the presence of electromagnetic influences that aren't fully understood. Some researchers have suggested that these electrical anomalies might be connected to the unusual geological characteristics of Central Florida. The region sits on a foundation of limestone that contains extensive cave systems and underground water networks that could potentially create unique electrical conductivity patterns.